Welcome, welcome, Arthur. We are on live now on LinkedIn. Thank you very much for joining me.
Happy to be
By
here.
the way, we are live on LinkedIn as well as YouTube as well as Twitter right now. So we are. So people, whoever wants to join and looking at us and listening to us online, I would request them to make this as engaging as possible. Ask questions. You may not be able to ask questions and stop us by coming on the camera or on the audio, but you can leave your comments on the chat and I will read them for you, and then we can answer all these questions. But I welcome Arthur, and I would like to first of all introduce my guest here. He is a veteran executive who has 3 decades long career, has acquired skill sets and experience in areas like executive leadership. He is so technology savvy. He has sales expertise and a modern marketing view. I believe Arthur, somebody who has both as a sales and marketing is a very, very good force, because having only a marketing knowledge is not enough. You have to have that sales experience to understand where it works. So
Yeah.
that's a fantastic combination here. And as I always say, you put people and customers first, and that's one of your strengths. He has worked with Fortune 100 companies, startups, small and medium businesses, all kind of businesses in the past. And his current company, he is the I would call you, rather than saying it's CEO, you call yourself as a chief story architect of the
Yeah.
art of standing out. And it's a story driven business where you're helping lots of businesses and companies come out with their story. They come out and improve their story and connect with the customers, investors, and other audiences. I mean, have I left anything, or would you like to add something more about you?
No, I think that's quite a lot, and I'm honored to be on your show to talk about how we can harness the power of story to accomplish more in our and for our businesses and
Yeah.
the clients that we serve.
Yeah. No, thank you. And one thing which I always feel is that the stories have, and I have talked before a few times on this subject for the last 6 months or so,
Yeah.
and stories have the. I agree that the stories have the ability to change the way people think and feel, which can be very powerful for the small businesses or small and medium businesses, and even the larger companies. But right now, since I am focused on small medium businesses, I'm only concentrating on the medium enterprises and the small enterprises. And my question is, why does storytelling work for businesses of this size? When I talk about size, there are three things in my audience: founders of startups, number two, small businesses, number three, medium businesses, say up to around 50 to 100 million.
Well, let's. I mean, I think that's a great question, and I approach the answer to that question with a historical lens, in that um, we know now that what Socrates said 2,500 years ago, Ben Franklin, a few hundred years ago, throughout history, it's been a truth that people have known by observation that when they heard a story or told a story, they could call people to action. So it's a historical truth that humans have always been wired for story, because we think, we dream, we problem solve, we make sense of the world by telling stories and listening to stories. So story is a powerful part of the human condition. We're wired for it. So our ability to maximize our ability to tell a thoughtful, insightful, and compelling story is a powerful tool to have in our stack of tools. I like to say, kind of jokingly, a lot of people today in sales in particular talk about the tech stack that they use to reach, engage, and nurture conversations with prospective clients. And I like to think that story is the oldest tool and maybe the most useful tool in the tech stack, because when you tell a really compelling story that's relatable, um, it touches emotion, that you not only can call them to action, but that story is repeatable and they can share it with other people, perhaps their boss that needs to bring you in to talk to you. So story is a part of the human condition. We think, we dream, we problem solve, we make sense of the world using story. And the better we become at telling stories, um, the more successful we can be in our small and medium-sized business.
Awesome. I understand that stories capture, like you said, people's attention, and it can be your audience of any kind, investors or your customers, your suppliers, or anybody who understands your story, and it captures it and keeps it for a longer period of time. And I think you and I talked about it in the past, that it is not about using the story to capture a client, or to get somebody to sign on the dotted line and say get a business from him. It is about engaging, signing, and keeping it for longer period of time, because that keeping it for longer period of time is what I assume you once you propose. Am I correct on that, or have I
Uh,
understood correctly?
oh, absolutely. And I think, there's a rule in sales that's been true for a long time. It's it's cheaper to keep a client that you already have than it is to go find a new one. And and that means that we're we have to be always filling the pipeline to get new business, but we also have to be engaged with and nurturing and holding on to the customers we have, because they are the foundation of any business. And that's a two-way street, in that in understanding their story, we know how to serve them. And when we know how to serve them, we know what stories to tell them to let them know that we understand them and we're here to serve and provide value to them. And we do that for our current base of customers that has helped us get to where we are. And the stories that we tell the customers that we want to approach and engage, the new prospective customers, similar story, but marginally different. So the idea that storytelling is important to keep the customers you have on board and to gain new customers is very real.
Awesome. And one thing which I want to talk about is that, whenever we talk about building your story, finding your own, or getting help from, say, organizations like yours to unearth or to get your story from down from the organization's fabric, the main thing which I sometimes feel, or people talk to me, is I am more concerned, and I'm a numbers guy. I care about the sales, and sales is the lifeblood of the organization. I don't care about the story and all that behind the scenes. What do you have to say to those people? And you have, or you do you have a different, because you have worn both hats. Like I have also worn both hats. I have been in sales, business development, and technology. You
Yeah,
also have seen sales, business development, and marketing, right? So,
yeah.
what do you think about that?
Well, I know that when I would talk to a executive in marketing, I talk to that executive different than I talk to the CFO. Um, and I think that we can extend that to 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 acknowledge that people come in different shapes and sizes, in the same way that we come with different temperaments. Some people are extroverts, some people are introverts. Some people want to be direct, tell me the bottom line. Other people want to hear the story. Tell me the narrative. It's important for us to listen, to do the research, to know who we're talking to know perhaps what story to tell them. The CFO, if they're all about the numbers, you wouldn't want to tell them the story about. If you were going to tell them a story, it's a story of the data. Data storytelling might resonate with the CFO. And that has become more real as big data has taken the world by storm in the last decade or more. We've had to become more adept at taking the rows and tables of very important metrics that we have and being able to communicate it in narrative form. And the narrative explains why these rows and tables of numbers are important. Because most lay people just see rows and numbers. And if you can take those numbers and turn them into a story about why they're important and how they affect the business and how the business will be changed if we do certain things, that's data storytelling, and it's an important skill to nurture, and perhaps now more than ever, because there is so much data. And we have to be so agile with the data that we manage, and we have to be able to communicate the power that's in that data to some people that are not numbers people. So the story is the vehicle to take a complex idea, data, and make it approachable by creating a narrative around it.
So what I wanted to dig on that a little bit more on that is that how does it help get us sales? Does it actually go and convert the customers, or is it just a fancy subject where, I'll tell you frankly, I have been early part of my career, I used to be in the bench, and somebody will just tell me this is my company's vision, and then I would say all that is bullshit, I don't want to hear that. Just tell me. I'm sorry to say that, but I used to feel as a frontline salesperson, or as a all those things, that
Yeah.
I don't think about your vision and all that. Sometimes people have a very lofty vision which is not even connected. But what do you have to say? Maybe, or I hope I'm not just answering that question myself, but I say sometimes I felt that the vision they have come up is so off that people are not connected. So I would like to you to comment on that sales and that vision and how stories help them.
Well, it sounds like you're talking about the mission statement that's in the break room on the wall.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that says we're wonderful people, we treat our employees great, we make super duper products
Yeah.
every day. And the truth is, you don't treat your employees well, and your products are kind of middle of the road. The vision and mission that's on the break room wall is not consistent with what they do in practice. And it's, our spidey senses tingle when we see they say one thing and do something else. And as a sales personality, often you're there to help them become more of the vision that they see of themselves. I think there's another component of that is a more granular approach to that. The reason that there's a disconnect between the vision and mission and the actual actions in the day-to-day business are that their values are not perhaps aligned with that vision and mission. And there's a whole idea about values-based selling, which is that if I know, well, I'll say it this way. We want to be known, liked, and trusted.
Yeah.
I break it down to the acronym KLT, to be known, liked, and trusted. I used to walk into offices. I'm calling on Sandeep, and I come into his office, and I sit down across the table, and I say, Sandeep, I see you've got a cactus and a lovely plant behind you. Oh, they're beautiful. Are you taking care of those? I want to strike up a conversation because maybe he's a plant guy, and I think in my mind that if he knows that I like plants and he likes plants, he's going to know and like me, and that's the beginning of the potential sale, to be known, liked, and trusted. I was a very young salesperson when that was my belief. I learned that only gets you so far. What gets you further is, in order to get the seat across the desk from the executive, sometimes it's the company name that's on your business card that gets you entree. What keeps you sitting across the desk and keeps you to be invited back is when they trust that the information you're going to share and the recommendations you might make won't get them fired from their position. Meaning that trust is really a an important thing. And so they want to know that as a representative of whatever company you work for, you have integrity. They want to know you have ethics. They want to know that you're a responsible, hardworking individual that knows your product inside and out. And you might even know a lot more about the competition, the competitive landscape than they do. So when you sit across the desk, they'll get integrity, they'll get ethics, they'll get a hard worker that knows you can say you're all those things. The best way to convey that is when they say, "Art, tell me something about yourself. We've invited you in because you work for company X, but I've been sitting here talking to you for a while. I know nothing about you." And you might tell them the story about who you are, because this is being known, liked, and trusted. You can say, Sandeep, it's funny you should ask that question. I was just having a similar conversation with a family member the other day as I was talking about my upbringing, where it was pretty hard. My dad lost his job. We ended up moving to my grandfather's farm. We lived in the barn, and we tended the horses and the cattle during the day. And I went to the school. That I came back. It did more work, and eventually my dad found another job, and we went back to the city. But man, that's 18 months that I was there really was. I learned so much. I had to work my tail off in school and on the farm. Dad wouldn't let me, and granddad wouldn't let me take it easy. But I learned the value of hard work. I learned the value of integrity, doing what I said I was going to do. And I learned so much. And you asked to know something about me. Those 18 months on the farm in my youth inform everything that I do today. And that's a bit of the story about who Art Jones is.
Fantastic. I love
You
it.
hear about my values in that,
Yeah.
and you might ask me to come back in because you respect that I'm connected to hard work in a really real way.
So I have a question here. You talked about and you gave me an example from a salesperson perspective. I'm still trying to figure out. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a business owner, and who does not believe that he has any special story to talk about for his business or his company or his small medium business. It's just a simple business. We are making some simple widgets or fasteners which have nothing to do with a lot of background about my staying in the bar and doing anything else. So how do you propose that they look at their story, and how do they refine or define or find or unearth their story, find and find the answers for their story, or maybe build their story?
Well, like my hypothetical story about the young man who lived in his grandfather's barn for 18 months,
Yeah.
we all have a story that precedes whatever we're doing today. And in those stories of our youth and our young adulthood, and maybe when we're in university, and the jobs we had before we had this one, there are forces that shaped us. So whether you're making fasteners today, but when you were playing lacrosse in high school, you learned the lesson of what it meant, deliberate practice, and you learned that if you improved a little bit every day, you could be the captain of the team one day. And that was your leadership training. You didn't know it then, but you look back at it now and say, that year where I moved from the freshman team to the varsity team because I really committed to hard work,
Yeah.
is the same values that I use of hard work and deliberate practice in this fastener business that I've built today. So I help leaders find the value in their origin story. And once they've done that, and they maybe connect with that year as a lacrosse player in high school, which may be 20, 30 years ago, they have evidence of a moment in time that is a narrative about their values and their commitment. And then they look at the rest of their timeline and they find other things that are just like it. Different stories, but moments in time where the forces in the world, the people, the places, the experiences that shaped them made them who they are today.
Mhm.
And when you hear an authentic story like that, We talk about leadership and authenticity a lot. Salespeople wanting to be more authentic. Don't make up stories. Share your own story. And
Yeah.
when you're authentic, there's something vulnerable about telling me a story about when you were in high
I
school.
want to talk about one seemingly or maybe inauthentic story from my perspective. I have, when I was shopping for my second car, for my family, I went through all these like Nissans and Mercedes and Infinity and Acura and all that. I'm not naming anybody, but 90% of the salespeople you talk to will talk about how their cousin or how their uncle, or if they don't own it themselves, the same car, they will say, "Oh, my uncle has it, and this is how it is." And I was saying, after a week, almost everybody's uncle or aunt or friend
Sounds like
has
sales
a
training to
story.
me.
So
Yeah.
that tells me they were just being trained to talk about that kind of a story, which is, in your opinion, a fake story to talk about, right? Or maybe I'm
Well,
not
I
saying you. Yeah, go ahead.
well, Sandeep, I think it's 2023, and we think that the exponential growth and speed at which things come at us every day. I mean, I don't know how many sales proposals we see online and everywhere, billboards as we drive around town. We've become very astute at being able to discern this I want to pay attention to, that I won't. I refer to it as our spidey senses tingle when we see it. It's spidey sense. By calling it the spidey senses is the nice way of saying it. That calling it the BS meter
Yeah,
is the truth. We can spot BS at 100 paces, and what you spotted in that stream of salespeople on different car lots saying the same thing was that it probably was sales training, because somewhere in the sales book for car salesmen, that's a line that makes you feel like, oh, your uncle bought this car and loves it. Oh, maybe I should buy the same car.
yeah,
The inauthenticity of that moment, our BS meter tingles, and we say, yeah, I don't trust you. And if you don't trust the salesperson,
yeah.
you're never going to do business with them.
So I have another story, and I may have made a mistake. And when I was looking at this webinar today, and I thought of this, there was a company which came, small company, which was making pasta, and it was a home-based pasta making company, and and it is owned by an Italian woman for last maybe 40 years. And my partner and I, partner said, business partner said, "Hey, why don't we think like that?" We sent her an email, and we didn't pursue it further. But I can tell you, our communication was, my problem with that was, what I told her. I said, if even if we buy it, how the hell we are going to say you and I have 40 years of pasta making, Italian pasta making, home cooked Italian pasta? I don't look Italian at all. So how are we? So the only thing which I thought was, maybe we keep maybe we ask the seller to be available for whole of her life, to be the chairman or the public face of the company, and we become the owner or something, because that's the only, or maybe become the quality assurance person also for this. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult. So that's one thing which I want to tell you. But the other thing is, for a pasta company, for an Italian restaurant, for a Greek restaurant, and it's a different thing. Even though you will see many Mexican guys working inside the kitchen, and it
Yeah.
usually happens in an Indian restaurant than anybody else. I think they understand how to make a butter chicken in the background. but
Yeah.
but but
Yeah.
but but the outside, it looks like an Indian story and origin, and from where it is coming from, an Italian. But for an for other business, for other kind of business, how do you think, is there any steps with which they can find their own story? Is there a way they can find the origin of their stories themselves? And one way is to call art and say, "Would you consult with this?" That's there, but
Yeah.
since we are providing this input, would you be able to share a process or something with which you can help some
Well,
people?
Absolutely, Sandeep. And I think that this is, the couple of stories that I've shared anecdotally about that young man living in the barn. Um, the other stories about authenticity and vulnerability are all personal stories that people would share. And because they're personal stories, we all have them. And, I mentioned Socrates earlier, and Socrates said 2,500 years ago, know thyself. In the city of Delphi in Greece, on the entry above the entry to the Temple of Apollo is inscribed, know thyself. People that would go visit the oracle to find out their fate, what the future held for them, would go through that entrance, and know thyself was written above. In China, around the same time, 2,500 years ago, one of the great thinkers and writers of the day, Lao Tzu, said, how did he say it? He says, to know others is intelligence, to know thyself is true wisdom. So there's in Shakespeare, 400 years ago, said, to thine own self be true. So our great thinkers throughout history have keep encouraging us to know ourselves, and I do too. If we just think about the places we've been and the forces the place that we've been have exerted on us and shaped us. My first travel from the United States to Europe, I was in Italy, and I can tell you almost chapter and verse how Italy, standing on the Ponte Vecchio in Firenze, shaped me, making me maybe more multicultural, giving me a greater sense of the diversity and creativity of another culture. And there are other places that I've traveled around the world and here in the States that continue to inform what I think and feel, my biases, my beliefs, my values. They come from the people, the places, the experiences that we've had, and we all just take them and spread them out before yourself on the conference room table, on little Post-it notes, let's say. And you say, okay, I've been to New York and I've been to Rome, and here's what I learned in those two cities. My best friend in my childhood, we would spend hours and hours together playing. But even as a youth, I always marveled at him because he was so, or she was, write that down, because those are the things that we learned along our journey that shape us and make us who we are today. And when you take those things in total, you may never share all of those stories, but you'll find the power in some of those stories to convey a value that helps you make decisions today. Maybe the value is courage. Maybe the value is compassion or empathy or listening. But some of those things come from nature. It's in the DNA. A lot of those things come from nurture. You've learned them along the way. I submit that without me being present, you could just start listing all those things. And then once you start, really miraculous things happen. You'll end up with 12 things on a sheet of paper. And then somebody will say, let's go to Trader Joe's and get something for dinner. And you'll be standing in the long checkout line with absent-mindedly looking at your phone, and another idea will percolate up, and there's something else for you to put on that list. That's another person, another place, another experience that shaped you. When you take those things in total, I call that your origin story. And when you end up with 30 things on that list or 12 things on that list, whatever you have, and then you look out into the world to say, I got this job, I work in a cubicle, but I really like to be my own founder one day. And I want to fix that thing that I see over there. I know I can fix it. I know that people living in that part of the world don't have clean water, and I want to fix that. And you should challenge yourself and say, what makes you think you can fix that? It exists because it's not fixed yet. Why you? And you look at the list of things that are in your origin story. Well, I've got courage. I've got discipline. I've got integrity. I've got the ability to communicate. And those 4 things out of your 12 might be enough. Because with those 4 things, you can build a team. And now, from your origin story, the source material, or your founding story, because in the founding story, you say, one day I sat back and I looked at the world and I said, I can fix that for those people that are struggling to get clean water. And I know I can fix it because I have amassed these things, these values that I live by. And let me tell you the story of where they've come from. And that's why I'm founding this business to go fix that thing broken in the world. Founding story. Then you have to tell the customer story. Well, who's struggling with this not clean water? Let me tell you their story. And what exactly you're going to do so they can get clean water. Let me tell you the story of the product that I'm building.
Yeah.
I have an origin story. That's the source material for my founding story, which comes before my customer story. And I can't do much without really knowing my customer. So their story and knowing it almost as well as they do is integral. And their story is superior to all other stories. Because as a salesperson, Sandeep, if you can't sit in front of me, your customer, and tell me that you know what I'm struggling with, I have no idea how you can help me. So every person selling anything has the responsibility to know almost everything that they can know about the client that they want to sell to. We call it the ideal client profile for a reason. We build ideal client profiles so we can do the work to understand who that ICP is. So when we speak to them, we can say, in my experience working with the clients that I serve, at 2 a.m. every night, they sit bolt upright in bed in a cold sweat worrying about this thing. Is that what happens to you? And they say, oh my God, I don't know how you know that. I absolutely, every night at 2 a.m., sweat on my brow. I said, well, we've got a solution for that. And let me tell you about the product that lets you sleep through the night. You can't do that without knowing their narrative.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you. And I love it. It clarifies a lot of my doubts. If I can say, this also helps salespeople and founders of the companies or small and medium enterprises and entrepreneurs talk and connect with their customers with the stories of their own and stories of the customers, aligning themselves and not sounding like a sales pitch, and that we always look for. That people always have a bullshit antennas up and saying, this guy is a salesperson and he's trying to sell him. But if you turn your communication into understanding the origin of the story of the customer and connect it with the origin of the story of your product and the yourself, that's what I understand from what you explained, there is a sweet spot which leads to a healthy bottom line with a great top line. Am I correct? And
Absolutely.
That?
I mean, when I first got into sales, I thought that my gift of gab, and I can talk all day, I thought that was my skill set that was going to make me successful. And I quickly learned that was the polar opposite. Listening was superior to filling the airwaves with your voice, because people like ask me one question and let me talk about myself. That's what we all love doing.
Yeah.
And when you ask, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. So we have only 5 minutes, 4 minutes more. I want to ask another topic here. There is always, in my understanding, whenever we talk about buying, making us or asking a customer to buy a product from us and helping it solve the problem, I think there is a inner story of the customer and there is an external transformation. So I always believe that we have to show the transformation to the customer before they can actually go and buy the product. They have to see that this product is going to solve their problem, and they have to see the future, in other words.
Yeah.
So and ability to see the future with the products being solved, which means that this product has solved my problem and I have achieved something and I've reached the future. If I am able to see that with your story and your product, then I'm able to get the sale, or then I'm able to buy that thing. How do you think your story driven technique, which you always teach, is able to show the transformation to the customer, and catapult them to the future, and say, with this product you are going to be where you want to be?
I think that there's first you have to tell them the truth. If I know you as my ideal client, then I will know things about you that I can say to you, and you say, "Oh my gosh, he knows me." And that truth, I earn your trust, because you say, "That guy's done some work. He really knows what keeps me awake at 2 a.m." And now I've got your trust. And when I say, "And we built a product to help you sleep through the night." So, well, first he knew that I woke up at 2 a.m. That took a lot of work. And he's built a product to help me sleep through the night. Maybe I should take a listen and see what he's talking about. What that does is it lets you know explicitly that I know something about the challenges you struggle with. I learned very early in my career, it's a catchy saying, nobody ever buys anything from you because you found the implied need. Implication means that I've sat in my conference room and I put Post-it notes and flip charts and wrote all over the whiteboard what I know about my client. Never talked to my client at all, but I've got a conference room full of Post-it notes and flip charts and whiteboard notes. This does the rep that goes out and says, "You're my ideal client profile and you've done some business with us, but all of my customers are just like you. Can you tell me why you bought this product and what other solutions you wish you had to solve problems in your business?" And they tell you, now you know explicitly what they bought your product for and what other problems they're trying to solve. Nobody ever buys anything because you know implicitly, just because you sat in your conference room or at your kitchen table and thought about what troubles your customer. Talk with them. And that really is born out of the notion that human-centered design thinking says that if you're going to solve a problem for somebody, talk to them, please. And they'll tell you what they need and help you build the product that will serve them best. Explicit understanding is superior to implicit guessing.
Yep. Thank you very much. And I don't see any questions from the audience, but it was a great conversation, Art. I would like to have another conversation with you in the near future, where we talk about your process. I don't know whether you have patented it or trademarked it, but I think you have a very unique process of story driven, and how do you do that? I will have another conversation on that. But thank you very much. I certainly believe that stories have the ability to change the way people think and feel, and it is very powerful, and it can actually, I believe, help you connect with your customer well and increase your bottom line and increase your top line. And actually, if you are a founder searching for investors, you can get that thing. And there's I we got a comment here from Ravindra. It says, really enjoyed and your storytelling approach. Thanks, Ravindra. And so I think it is very, very important that story driven approach should be used for even content marketing, for whenever you're writing out the content out there. Like it says, it means, like, if I can use the word, it is like the heart of the entire marketing, or if I can go, it is like you and I talk about subconscious and all that all the time, right? So we talk about you and I have a very connection with spirituality, and we have our discussions on that, and subconscious mind and conscious mind. So I would say this is kind of a consciousness, but in the fabric of in the body of the entire business. And if you talk about story as an inherent thing in the entire business, and whether it is inside the company or outside the company, that's where you connect. And I may have gone beyond my scope here. You are an expert.
I know we're running out of time, but just to comment on that comment is that, I early in our talk this afternoon, I mentioned that story is perhaps the most powerful tool in the tech stack. It's just an old technology. But the truth is that if humans are wired for story, then like pranayama, breathing, meditation, businesses around the world now have a meditation room because they know that it serves their employees to give them space to go grab a 15-minute meditative moment. They'll come back more creative, more productive. In the same way that story, there's a PhD, Paul Zak, who was at University of Pennsylvania where he got his PhD, and he did a study at Claremont McKenna College in California, Southern California. And his study proved that story changes the biology in humans. He was a neuroeconomist. He wanted to do a study on why people buy things. So he put a bunch of people in a room. He drew blood from them, then told them a story about a boy named Ben. The father is pushing the young boy about 2.5 years old in a swing, and the little boy is laughing, the blue sky, white puffy clouds floating across the sky, and the father knows something that Ben, the child, doesn't know. The father knows that the boy, Ben, is dying. Paul Zak draws blood a second time, and he can then see that when you first hear that story, that I didn't tell the whole story, but it's because it's really a sad story, but the process was to see what effect the story had on the humans in the room.
Yeah.
And at first, cortisol spikes because you feel like the father knows something the boy doesn't know, and this is what he knows. You're shocked. And then you have empathy. Oxytocin begins to flow in the bloodstream.
Wow.
The story changed the biology. If the hormone starts flowing in your bloodstream as a human, your biology is changed. The thesis at the end of the study is that story changed the biology in humans, but one better, because he was studying why people buy things. He placed somebody at the exit that was collecting money for children's charity.
Mm-hmm.
He paid them in cash. Thanks for coming. I hope the poke drawing the blood didn't hurt too much, but we'll call you back again if we have another study. On the way out the door, the person said, "Would you like to donate to the children's fund?"
Yeah.
Most people, and they could tell by the level of oxytocin that was emitted in that individual's bloodstream if they were going to donate or not donate. The story forecasted who would donate to the children's fund as those people left the room at the end of the study.
Fantastic, Art. I think I will have more conversations, and I have another comment from a LinkedIn user, and name is hidden here. This person says, it reminds me of Ashwath Damodran, I think is a professor at NYU and company valuation expert. He talks about both narrative and numbers are essential in understanding value. Thank you, gentlemen. And thank you, Art. It's always pleasure to talk on various topics with you, especially story driven. I think it is the blood, or it is the consciousness within the entire company, and it should be treated like that. And thank you very much, and look forward to speaking with you soon. Bye.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sandeep. Always a pleasure.